3-4's video, we're on page 309, is brought to you by this Lego Pirate Man person. Hairy chest with an anchor tattoo. We got some eyebrows going on. It's a little hard to see with the lighting here. We got some dark green pants. Great color. And his little skull cap. No, what is this thing called? The bandana matches his pants. That's important for a pirate to have matching outfits, I think. Okay, so this section, 3-4, we're looking at student loans and mortgages. So this is, it's the same thing as 3-3 in terms of borrowing a car. It's the same monthly payment formula, the same idea of an installment loan, where in each of these cases, you're borrowing an amount of money and you're repaying it over a fixed amount of time. The big difference here is you tend to borrow more money for loans, student loans and mortgages. So it's a larger amount is what it tends to be. I suppose depends on what kind of car you're buying, of course. And the length of the loans tend to be longer. Okay, so first thing to note, there are three types of loans that you can get. There's the federal loans that come directly from the federal government. There's federal loans that are given out by banks. And then there's private loans. The best are the federal loans by the government. They tend to have fixed interest rates. They are regulated by Congress, which is a little iffy, but they tend to be lower interest rates. The private loans are the worst because they tend to have they tend to be the most expensive. When it comes to federal loans, there are two types. There are subsidized and unsubsidized, and we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so let's look at some of the things that go with student loans. The first thing to note, fix this in your brains and your reference sheets. Student loans, while you're in school, are simple interest. So if we're calculating interest, that means from 3-1, we're looking at I equals PRT. And in other words, that means interest only accrues on the balance that you borrowed, not on the interest that is accruing as well. This happens while you're in school. So you borrow the amount of money to pay for school. The assumption is you don't have income yet because you're in school, maybe full-time. That's what a traditional student would be. And so we're not going to penalize you because you can't pay. Okay, so here's a scenario. Let's say you borrow $6,500. This is a terrible interest rate, but whatever, there it is. How much interest is going to happen in a year? Well, that's just this straight up I equals 6,500 that you borrow the principal times our interest rate. Remember to convert to a decimal times the time here. That's 1. What do we end up with? Well, Desmos will tell us. So in 1 year, we end up owing an extra $442 because we didn't have the $6,500 in our bank account to pay for that. Well, often financial institutions use 365.25 for financial calculations in terms of the number of days in a year. That's because of a leap year, which happened this year. In other words, February 29, which occurs every 4 years, right? And if you take 1 year and divide it by 4, you get 0.25. So every 1 year we have an extra day in it. I don't know that I have the units here correctly labeled, but that's the point. Every 4th year there's an extra day. So if we spread that extra day over the 4 years, I think maybe I should put 1 day per 4 years like this. There's 0.25 days per 1 year extra. Okay, so if we're going to use that number, we can calculate the amount of daily interest that accrued on this 6,500 loan. So here's the total annual interest, this much per year. If we divide that by the number of days in 1 year, using this amount, we get the amount of interest that you're being charged per day. Again, Desmos is our friend here. So I'm just going to divide this by 365.25, and we get that it's about $1.21 per day. That's our cost to go to school. Now that's every day of the year, right? Okay, so this always kills me. Authors then's like, well, what about how much accrues in a month? Well, you know that there's not all months have the same number of days in there. Some months have 31, some have 28 or 27 or 30. I don't even know. Who cares? What we're going to do is we're going to average out 30.44 as the average number of days in a month to simplify it. So what we would do is take this $121 per 1 day, and we'd multiply it by 30.44 days per 1 month, and we'll get the interest per month. Okay, so 1.21 times 30.44. Okay, we're being charged $36.83 per 1 month. So there it is. This is the monthly interest we're being charged. Our author gives us some little formulas here. I'm going to suggest, I'm showing you this, I'm going along with the author, but I think we could always use this annual interest rate and ignore this daily and monthly interest rate. And I think that's an easier, simpler calculation, which is what I'm going to ask you to do on worksheets and exams. Okay, so moving forward, we're then asked to calculate a total amount we would owe. So for this amount, if you start school in August and then graduate in May, so this is going to be 3 years and 9 months later, and then payments begin 6 months after graduation, how many months have interest been accruing? Well, note that 3 years is the same thing as 12 months per 1 year. So that's the same thing as 36 months. So there's the 3 years. And then there's the 9 months that was going on there. And then we've got 6 months that we don't have to make payments. I don't know if you know about this yet. When you graduate, you have 6 months to find a job before you have to start making payments on your loans. It's like a grace period. Okay, so this is 15 and 40. So that would be 51 months before you have to make payments. So how much interest would have accrued, simple interest, while you were in school? Well, that's the $36.83 per month times these 51 months that you're in school. And that's going to get us the total amount that we would be added to what we owe once we begin repaying this loan. Ends up being $1,878.33. Now I want to show you something. We did all of this crazy calculation to get to this 1,800. What we could have done is said, hey, 51 months is the same thing as 4.25 years. So what if we just used the I equals PRT, took the 6,500, did 0.068, and then times 4.25? How similar are these amounts? Oops. They are really close. Note, they're about 17 cents difference. Okay, so that's how I'm going to ask you to do the calculations. I'm going to say, let's just look at the annual interest rate. Let's always use an annual interest rate. Let's not do what our author just did and break our interest rate down into a daily and then back up into a monthly and then calculate a monthly amount. Let's just run through it as an annual amount. Let's just figure out how many years worth of time are you in school and do the years amount, and we'll get basically the same amount. It's a little bit higher, but that's okay. It's going to be a really good estimation of the amount of simple interest that accrues while in school.